But getting away from the outrage culture, since we're talking about writing, I wanted to introduce a new segment on the podcast.
We have segments?
Yes, we have segments, which is Jude doing her book review.
Yeah, writing.
And my lovely fiance.
She's right here. You don't have to do an intro for her.
She's an avid reader.
Excuse you.
And I always love asking her about what she's reading because
I'm not just some man's woman.
I always love asking her about what she's reading because she does such a great job at telling me about these books that I don't have time to read or never will read. And she makes them very
Matt
entertaining.
always says, I'm a writer, not a reader.
I'm a talker, not a... Yeah. I get it. Before we get into the new book that you read, I did want to talk to you about Dracula.
You did?
Because I listened to the audio version.
Okay.
And it was done very much in the same vein that Matt had his book done.
Okay.
They actually went even farther, and instead of having one person do different voices, they actually had a full cast.
Okay.
Their narration was done by like 8 different people.
It's called a dramatization.
The dramatization of the book, and it was fantastic. Oh my god! I listened to this book, and there has not been a movie made that has done this book justice yet.
No, I agree.
There just hasn't.
Yeah.
And I know you said it was a little dull at times, and it felt like you were just sitting, listening to somebody's diary.
It was so long-winded
Yeah.
of the detail. But maybe if I had listened to it instead of read it, I would have been a little bit more invested in the detail of it.
I think I might be able to share it with
even
you.
with all of that, I was still so invested in this story.
I feel like Shakespeare is much the same way. Like when you read Shakespeare, it's very dry, but when you hear it as a play, it's like, oh, wow, this is good.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. So, yeah, I enjoyed the hell out of the book, and I'm glad you liked it, too, for the most part. And I think we both agree that it's just, like, these movies have just not done...
Which is surprising, because supposedly Francis Ford Coppola was like, I'm all about the source material and the author.
The adaptation was horrible. It was so super sexed. There was just like Lucy, the best friend. She was just like such a I hate using this word. Such a slut. In the movie, it was just like her tits were out all the time, and she was just like making out with people all the time, and just being very, very like, ooh, what kind of sex things are you gonna do with Mr. Harker when you marry him, Mina? And none of that was in the book. They were all very chaste and very like with the times. What?
To sell it to the male demographic, because as Matthew Kadish has stated, sex sells.
Well, also, I think that they made that movie like coming off of Interview with a Vampire, and that really kind of upped the...
It was very romanticized.
Yeah, because up till then, vampires had been horror, but with Interview with a Vampire, it kind of switched vampires into a more like sexualized look. And
then we got Twilight, so thanks, everybody.
Look what you did.
Look what you've done, you bastards. Now nobody wants to touch vampires anymore.
Yeah, it's not like Nosferatu.
Oh, that's my favorite. Okay, that movie, I've watched it. I was like, I gotta watch this like original Dracula
Did you
movie.
watch The Shadow of the Vampire?
No.
Okay, I haven't either. Ooh, let's watch that together.
Okay.
All
right.
But can you see teenage girls going gaga over Nosferatu?
No. And that movie was so much better. Nobody speaks. It's a silent movie that's in total black and white, and all it is atmosphere and music. That's all they have to work with. And it was the best Dracula movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, and like up until that point, like vampires were monsters, and that's just what everyone knew. And like in the 90s, vampires just became this like
sex appeal.
Maybe they're kind of sexy.
Well, vampirism was like a allegory for STDs.
Was it?
That's what the whole 90s thing was. Like
the 90s
the
thing,
blood disease that turned you into a monster.
Okay.
It was kind of a metaphor for AIDS and stuff like that. So, but that was kind of like Anne Rice's contribution to the genre was she made vampires sexy. And that was something that hadn't been done before.
Guys, I'm just going to put this out there because I haven't done a deep dive podcast in a while. Like the last one I did was on
C.
No. I mean like a...
If you haven't listened to our Seed podcast, please do.
All 3 episodes.
Alex hates it, but we love it.
That 3rd episode is on Patreon only.
It's the best one.
It is the best one, yeah.
You have to pay to listen to that one.
Oh my god, that is some gold.
like when Jude and I sat down and listened to it, we couldn't stop laughing.
We were horrified and also we were like, this is genius. This is awesome. I've never been better.
We need to be drunk all the time. More.
I'm gonna have to re-release it because I know you hate the Mario music in the background. I'll take that out and re-release it.
It distracts from the shenanigans.
Yeah.
Noted.
Yeah.
I'll take it out.
Shenanigans stand on their own.
I'll re-release it and take it out.
That should be the name of the episode. Shenanigans stand on their own.
Yeah.
Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, deep dive. Okay, so I my podcast used to be known for just its super deep dives into educational stuff. Before we ruined it, and just started like, trailer reactions and casting rumors. I did like Star Wars deep dive.
No, I've listened to your earlier stuff.
Okay, cool. Perfect.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And
so you're the one.
So yeah. And I would love to do a vampire deep dive with you guys if you want to.
Absolutely.
Like from the beginning, from the 1800s novel all the way up until cinematic history.
Stop talking. I'm in.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Done. It's in the books.
You had me at Mimosa.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to make Bloody Marys for that one. We gotta make some Dracula.
You were like, "Can I have some Baileys in my coffee?" And I was like, "I love you."
Can we watch 80 John Cusack movies, please?
Yeah.
I love you.
That can be a Patreon only thing, just the vampire deep dive.
Yeah.
How do you feel about sharks?
I love sharks.
Oh my god, anything with teeth, right?
Yes.
You two really are the same person, right?
No. Are you feeling okay? Because you basically proposed to Alex.
Hey, I don't discriminate.
So wait, while we're talking about
I don't remember.
our relationship, how do you feel?
How weird it is that me and Jude are the same
We're
person.
the same exact person.
Well, in all fairness, like your wife and I are the same person.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, good
No,
Lord.
I really care about my skin and all organic. Where can I get some organic moisturizer, Alex?
You can go to organicallywonderful.com.
And type
Check
in
out-
salty15 for your discount.
Thank you very much, Jude. That's right. You can go to the checkout counter and type in salty15 to get 15% off your entire purchase. And you can check out all the cool products that we have that are 100% non-toxic, all organic, only a few ingredients. We don't have a bunch of crazy things you can't pronounce in them. Go check it out. They're good for you.
Do you know that I'm going to do a cross collaboration with the product line?
Are you? Mm-hmm. Oh, boy.
Yeah. Have you been made aware of this?
Have you talked to Ashley about
Yes.
it? Oh, my God.
Oh no, Jude just decided independently that she's going to work with
Coming
you.
over, I'm taking your shit.
Did you know she's in Vogue?
No.
Yeah, she was in the latest version of Vogue.
Yeah, so I have a friend that does makeup tutorials on YouTube, and I was talking to her about doing like a skincare thing because I am an esthetician and a really good esthetician, and I was like, hey, how about if I do a skincare facial, and then you do a makeup tutorial, and we do like a cross promotional YouTube video. And so she was like, yeah, that's a great idea. And then I started thinking about what kind of product line I want to use. And I was like, it'd be great if we could use something local because she's a local makeup artist. I'm a local esthetician. Let's keep it like Las Vegas. Yeah. And then I thought of Ashley. So I contacted your lovely wife and I was like, hey, would you be all right if I featured your product line in this YouTube tutorial that I want to do? And she was like, yeah.
That's amazing.
So we're going to promote each other.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome. Stepford Wives is the new book that you read, correct?
Yeah.
How did you enjoy?
Hit me with my mouth full, why don't you?
That's what she said.
Literally.
I've been watching
Just literally just said that.
I've been watching The Office too much. My inner
You're Michael Scott. Yeah.
my inner Michael Scott's coming out.
But so did you have no more questions about Dracula?
No, that was it. I just wanted to comment on how much better the audiobook was than
Apparently.
reading it yourself.
Apparently the audiobook was an easier read than the book.
Yeah.
So Jude, what new book are we going to talk about today?
So I read The Stepford Wives this past week.
Are you going to read a script? You are, aren't you?
I mean, I made myself some notes.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Are you all right with that? I thought this was a nerd podcast.
Do your thing.
All right. So I did it wrong though. I did myself a disservice. Is I read it in a day. It fucked me up.
How long is the book?
It's quick. It's a quick read. Sorry,
okay.
what were you going to say?
I wanted to ask you, why do you choose to read The Stepford Wives?
I'm not sure why. I get like hey, we recommend this for you. And sometimes I'll just like go on a deep dive in an author that I like. And I've read 2 other books by the author, which is Ira Levin. And I really like his style of writing. I like his characters. I like what he does with women. I like what he does with men. And I like how his stories just kind of grab you and don't let go of you until like the author is done with you. And I love that about his stories. Like I was telling Kadish the other day, like he has this knack for making his male characters like the most, for lack of a better description, the most like unsympathetic dickhead characters. And it's just like, you're reading about this character and you're just like, ugh. Like I'll read a story and I'll like be invested in this story and I'll like just be in the middle of, I feel like I'm a part of this story and I'll just be like interacting with these characters and I'm just like, ugh.
I mean, it's funny because I haven't read this guy's stuff, but from Jude's description of it, when I asked her about them, it feels like this guy is one of those SJW feminists.
I was just going to say that.
But in the 70s.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
Like, that sounds
and that's
like
what's so interesting.
woke,
yeah, this is so interesting is
like
that this
all men are terrible.
Yeah.
This was written in 1972, right in the middle of the women's lib movement, and the book centers on the Eberhardt family. So they moved to this small town in Connecticut, and they moved from the big city, and they moved to Connecticut, and they moved to this small town where it just so happens all of the husbands in the town have turned their wives into robots. And it's, I mean, not obvious.
But not actual robots. It's unclear, right?
It's very ambiguous. And I think after I was finished reading the book and sat on it, I've come to the conclusion that they are robots. And she kind of says it throughout in her like inner monologue, they seem like robots. They seem like robots.
When you say robots, though, like, what does that mean exactly?
So for a while I was reading this story, I kept thinking that they had just like, not just, but like that the husbands had lobotomized their wives and like reprogrammed them.
So
and
all the wives are like perfect wives.
Yeah. So let me just tell you about the book.
Okay.
Shut up for a second.
So yeah. Pipe down, you awful man, you. Well, a woman is speaking.
You misogynist.
I'm an unsympathetic dickhead.
That's not inaccurate.
But she still agreed to marry me. What does that say about her?
That I'm like such a good person. All right. So as I said, I read this book in like a 24-hour period, and that is a mistake. This book fucked me up. I read it in 24 hours, and then like for days after, I kept giving Kadish the side eye, like, motherfucker, I know you want to turn me into a robot. You're not turning me into a robot. Please don't turn me into a robot.
I'm still planning to turn it into
Yeah, no, like, I read it like a week ago, and still I was like, babe, I know I left my socks on the floor. Please don't turn me into a robot.
If you leave a drawer open one more time, woman.
Seriously, it's like living with a ghost. There's always just like cabinet doors open.
She just forgets to close cabinets constantly.
Anyway, so
I'm not your therapist. I don't care.
Back to the book. So the main character is Joanna. She's a wife. She's a mother. She moves to this small town. She notices that the other wives are like very, very perfect, and they like live for mopping their floors. And she just thinks like, oh, well, we're in the suburbs. Like maybe things are different here. And then she makes 2 friends with these 2 other women that are more like her. And then as she lives there, she watches her friends like one by one go the way of the robot. And like one day they're talking about how crazy all the other wives are. And the next day they're like, oh, that was just nonsense. My husband deserves a putting green. And like, I love waxing my floor. And she's just like, okay, something crazy is going on. And she realizes that it's like the husbands are doing this to their wives. And it's not just like some of the husbands. It's all of the husbands. And it's including her husband. And she's next. And so the book ends with a standoff between Joanna, the main character, and all of the town's husbands. And she's like running for her life, and she's trying to get away, and she's trying to survive. Meanwhile, she's also questioning her sanity because maybe she's just making all of this up in her head. And I just really connected with that because, like, I know I have felt in my life like there's a choice between like trusting your intuition and trusting your gut or trusting what other people say about you, and having to make the decision between like knowing yourself and choosing to believe yourself or choosing to believe what other people say about you. And it was just...
What are some of the things that the husbands were telling Joanna to make her question her sanity?
Just that maybe she had... she missed the city. Maybe she needed rest. Yeah. Maybe she was just unwell. Maybe she needed medication. Maybe she needed to see a psychiatrist. And she does end up going to see a psychiatrist.
Wasn't a lot of it just like, well, I mean, our wives just want to make us happy. Like they're doing this because they're good wives.
It's such a gaslighting situation because like she starts to believe like, oh, well, maybe I'm just a terrible wife, a terrible mother, a terrible person. Maybe I should be like that. Well, why aren't I like that? But also these are fucking robots and I can either run for my life and survive or I'm crazy. Mm-hmm. And so I like really connected with that, and like I've never.
Sorry, it's the second time you said that. I'm like, what is Matt doing?
I mean, he's never had me impregnated at a satanic ritual or anything, but
not yet. Anyway, not yet.
Like I see you, Rosemary, and I feel for you.
I really connected to this character who's being tortured by her husband.
So the author of this book also wrote Rosemary's Baby, so that's why I said that. Go ahead. Yeah. So basically in Stepford, these men decided that they didn't want the compromise. Oh, I'm HBIC.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. They didn't want the compromise of maintaining a marriage or having like did you just take a shot of Bailey's? Do you regret it?
No, but I thought that was leftover coffee.
No. That was just straight Bailey's.
Just did straight up Bailey's.
It wasn't bad.
Okay.
I thought I had leftover coffee in my cup, so I drank it, and I was like, that's not coffee.
Okay.
Yeah. Jude was trying to be a perfect wife and prepare it for you.
Yeah, basically. Anyway, so these men just decided that...
I'm peeing in the corner.
They just wanted some like maids and sex bots to like raise the kids and do
doing this
No,
wrong?
You're. I'll do it all because I can do it all.
I am woman.
This is why we need.
Look, see, she is doing it.
This is why we need Stepford Wives.
Please don't turn me into a robot.
You're perfect the way you are, Jude.
Oh,
don't
thank
change.
You. So anyway, these men in Stepford, the husbands, they just decided they didn't want to have to maintain actual relationships with their wives or compromise or meet them halfway. They just wanted basically yes women that would raise the kids, do the laundry, and ask the D's. And it is dark. It's dark and it's horrifying. And for days after I read it, every time I pulled off my socks and left them on the floor, a little voice inside my head was like, "You're digging your own grave, Jude."
I literally told her when she was telling me about this book that it sounds like the written word for the patriarchy.
Yeah, which is so interesting that it was written in 1972.
Mm-hmm. People tend to think that these issues are like new to like, ever since 2016. And I've been guilty of that too. Like, I feel like collectively people have lost their mind once Trump got elected and like everything's just been blown completely out of proportion. But a lot of these issues have been around for a really long time.
Yeah.
They just got forgotten by current generations.
The women's liberation movement started in the late 60s and went all the way through, I think kind of started to fizzle out in the 80s, mid to late 80s.
And then picked back up again.
Now.
These are all old issues.
I really thought that the ending of this book, the way Jude described it, was very fascinating because...
I didn't want to spoil it in case anybody wants to
read
it.
I'm going to say that it's very ambiguous. Like, Jude's joking that the wives are all robots, but you never actually find out what happens to the wives. It's like, are they brainwashed? Are they replaced by androids? Like, you never really know.
Movie adaptation has them replaced by actual robots, right?
Yeah.
Like Westworld type robots.
Yeah, but that's not in the book.
No, it's not. And it's really fucked up because every time I've obviously been swearing a lot and I'm going to keep doing so.
He gave up on trying to keep this clean a long time ago.
So,
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
So, I mean, what's really fun is I was telling Matt, like, I don't know if our listeners will think that it's as horrifying as I do, but like when they do whatever they do to the wives, say they lobotomize them or say they turn them into robots, they give them all new tits. All of them get new tits. And she like Joanna, the character who's like last in the book, she's like, is she get new tits? Like every time this happens, it's fucked up. Like, how dare you just chloroform your wife, lobotomize her, and change her body?
But it is interesting how like the book basically takes the stance that the women are made to fulfill like what men want. So it's like they're the housekeeper, they're the child rearer, they're the sex vixen in the bedroom, the submissive, yes dear. But in addition to that, they also have like the idealized bodies, and it's just kind of like everything that the feminists think that makes men evil is what these men are in the book.
I think that's the point of the book, right?
Yeah, it's totally the point.
Yeah.
And it's so satirical too, and it's just like it grips you. It's very gripping. And I really enjoy this author. I read a couple of other books by him. He wrote Rosemary's Baby. He wrote Son of Rosemary. He also wrote Sliver and A Kiss Before Dying and several other things. So I really recommend him. I really enjoyed this book. Like I said, I read it in 24 hours. I was the same way with this that I was with Rosemary's Baby. Like I could not put it down. So I recommend it.
Cool. Very good. Thank you, Jude.
Well, thank you for giving me your time.
Fantastic Stepford Wives book review.